Expansion joint sealant, technical perspective. Today we are going to be looking at the type of expansion joint sealants. What are expansion joint sealants? Why are they even required? Criteria for choosing an expansion joint sealant for your project. Standard installation practice for installing an expansion joint sealant. Then we're going to review some quality assurance, quality checks when installing an expansion joint sealant. Okay, without any further delay, what are expansion joint sealant and why are they required? Yes, an expansion joint sealant is actually required in buildings to help accommodate movement and expansion due to thermal influence on the building. Okay, so building bridges, infrastructures, these are very large structures, and anytime there is intense heat, given that we're in our global warming session, the concrete tends to expand, and this can lead to cracking of the concrete as a mass. Hence, we have to make some adjustments, some accommodation for this expansion. That is why where expansion joint sealant comes into the picture. So instead of having the whole concrete mass casted as one whole monolithic unit, what engineering intelligence has simply done is to break it down into sections. So that way, even if a section is affected, you don't need to decommission or destroy all the total sections of that infrastructure or construction unit. You just need to treat the parts within which the failure occurred, separated by an expansion joint. Okay. What is an expansion joint sealant? An expansion joint sealant is the material used to fill the gap or the void that would exist within an expansion joint. Okay. Now, why is this necessary? Why do we have to fill this gap or this void that is created that is called an expansion joint? We have to fill this gap in order to prevent debris from filling in that gap. Because if debris or sand or laytowns fill in that gap and prevent the concrete mass from expanding and contrasting, the purpose of the expansion joint would be defeated. Okay, so this is why expansion joint sealant is very important. Okay. Types of expansion joints. We have bridge expansion joints. We have masonry expansion joint. We have pipe expansion joints. We have railway expansion joints. There are different types of expansion joints, and there are four. And bridge expansion joint is actually made from metal. The kind of structure actually affects the kind of expansion joint that will be used. Okay, just as how bridge expansion joint is different from the expansion joint you will see on a normal concrete floor or in a filling station or in a parking lot. So there are different types. We also have construction joints, we also have control joints and all. Okay. So types of expansion joint sealants. Okay, there are three main types. And the first one is the silicone expansion joint sealant, which is very excellent for and flexible, resistance to UV light, and very suitable for external application or uses. Okay, we have the next one, polysulfide expansion joint sealant. Now, polysulfide expansion joint sealant is actually an advanced chemical product. One major benefit of it is that it has very good resistance to movement. Okay, that means it's very flexible. All right. For a place where you experience frequent movements, polysulfide can be a very good option. Okay, then for polyurethane expansion joint sealant, these are actually ideal for a place where you may have impact, a place where you may have abrasion. Okay, now polyurethane expansion joint sealant are very good for high traffic areas because when they cure, they're actually quite strong. Okay, an example of a polyurethane expansion joint sealant is our Costa Expansion 100 and Expansion 300. Okay, and the example of the polysulfide expansion joint sealant is our Expansion 200. Okay, please, if you have any question, kindly jot it down or chat us up, and we'll get back to you during the question and answer section. All right. Now, compatible substrates. The different types of expansion joint sealants available have different rates of adhesion, okay? And for the silicone expansion joint sealant, it has good adhesion to glass, ceramic, metals, concrete. Yes, for the polysulfide expansion joint sealant, it has good adhesion to non-porous materials, such as metals, glass, some wood, plastic, concrete, while for polyurethane expansion joint sealant has more like the widest range of adhesion to substrates. Okay. Consideration when selecting an expansion joint sealant for your project. Okay. What are things we have to look out for before we can say we want to choose an expansion joint sealant for a particular project? One of the things we have to consider is the place where the project is being done. Is it going to be exposed to UV light? Is it in an enclosed place? So UV resistance is another thing we have to consider. Okay, then compatibility with the substrate. Okay, what kind of substrates are we applying the expansion joint sealant to? It's another designing factor that will determine the kind of expansion joint sealant we're going to use for our projects. Then flexibility, all right? Like I said, a place that experiences very high movement, polysulfide is very good. For a place of high traffic, polyurethane is actually very good. So these are the things you will also need to consider as well. The flexibility, the traffic movement, okay? Then the resistance to abrasion, okay? Is the expansion joint located in a place that will have constant abrasion, constant movement or impact, okay? Then the ease of application as well. For instance, what kind of application method or style are we going to use to install the expansion joint sealant? Is it the gun grade? Is it the pourable grade? These are things we will need to determine, all right? Then the durability and weather resistance as well, okay? So these are the considerations for selecting an expansion joint sealant. Okay, now we're moving to the standardized practice or the right way of installing an expansion joint sealant generally, having determined what kind of expansion joint we'll be using based on the kind of projects we have at hand. Okay, for surface preparation, this is a very focal part to the durability or effectiveness of an expansion joint sealant, in the sense that whereby an applicator messes up the surface preparation aspect, it has very high tendency of leading to product failure. Okay, so now what are the proper or the right steps to take for your surface preparation? The first thing you need to do is determine the width of your joint. And why do we need to know the width of our joint? We need to know the width of our joint in order to determine the kind of or the size of the backing rod we are going to install within the joint. All right. Now, for an ideally, your backing rod should be twice the width of the expansion joint to be sealed. Okay, so that it has enough tension to hold the expansion joint within the depth we are looking at installing it. Okay. This can simply be achieved by using a measuring tape to determine the width of the expansion joint. Once this is done and the backing rod is already determined, another thing, the next thing we need to do in the surface preparation is to wire brush. Okay. Now, sometimes an applicator may look at it as, okay, the joint is clean and it just pours water or do anything outside using a wire brush. This is actually an error, okay? The essence of the wire brush is actually not just to remove debris and remove any loose latents alone, okay? It's also to reprofile or reform the surface where the expansion joint sealant would rest on, okay? Because it's also aid in adhesion. If the substrate is not finely, if the surface is not fine, put it like that, like perfectly fine. So if the surface is moderately abrased, it will aid in the adhesion of the expansion joint sealant. Okay, so that's part of the reason why we have to use a wire brush to clean out the expansion joint. Okay. Then after taking out all debris, loose latents, the next thing we have to do is vacuuming. The essence of the vacuuming is to remove powdery or very fine loose materials. These loose materials can actually accumulate to prevent adhesion as well. Okay. Then once this is done, we install our maxing tape. Okay. Ideally, the maxing tape should be well aligned to the expansion joint edges. Why? Because if the maxing tape is not well aligned, by the time you are removing the maxing tape, you will find out that you have some expansion joint sealant protruding at the edge of the expansion joint. Okay. Now, the next step, still on your surface preparation, is to install your backing rods. Okay, now the backing rods, like I said before, ideally should be twice the width of the expansion joint. This is to ensure proper tension. Okay, so once this is done, after installing the backing rod, final activity for your surface preparation is the priming. Okay, we have Costa Primer 10 that can be used as a primer. Now, the essence of priming is actually to promote adhesion of the backing of the expansion joint sealant to the expansion joint. That's the essence of priming. Another error that most applicators do when installing an expansion joint sealant is they actually prime before they install the backing rod. Now, this is not so ideal because the backing rod is going to be receiving the expansion joint to itself, and without the primer, it's going to have lesser tendency for adhesion. So priming after the installation of backing rods would actually increase the adhesion rate of the expansion joint sealant to the backing rod as well. Okay. So, with this, we've come to the conclusion of the surface preparation for the installation of an expansion joint sealant. Okay, now sealant application. Now, when it comes to installing an expansion joint sealant, there are two major ways through which we can apply the expansion joint sealant. We have the gun grade and we have the pourable grade. Okay, the gun grade involves using a pressure gun, hydraulic pressure gun, to apply the expansion joint sealant. Also for products that comes in sausage, C6 sausage, just like our Expansion 100, comes in 600 cc, okay, 600 cubic centimeter. A gun grade application is the best fit for it. All you just need to do is fit it into the gun and begin to pressure after opening it. Okay, now that's the gun grade. Now the gun grade is actually suitable for both horizontal and vertical expansion joint applications. Okay, the next way we can actually install our expansion joint sealant is the pourable grade. Okay, so what do we mean by pourable grade? This simply involves you pouring out the expansion joint sealant into the expansion joint. Okay, and this is somewhat faster than the gun grade when it comes to horizontal applications. Okay, an example of a pourable grade is our Coastal Expansive 200. It comes in two component parts, 4 kg and 2 kg. Okay, this will be mixed thoroughly and then applied to the expansion joint. Okay. And finally, the finishing. Okay, the finishing is also a very important part of the expansion joint sealant application. Now, there is the rule of thumb now is that when finishing an expansion joint sealant, it should have a concave meniscus finish. This actually gives room or accommodates the movements and contraction, the expansion and contraction of the concrete. While a concave finish gives more depth to the expansion joint sealant. Hence, it will have more allowance to expand with the movement of the concrete expanding, and would also have allowance when it contrasts together as well. Okay, so once we've finished the expansion joint sealant surface with a finishing tool, the next thing we can do is to actually finish up with our hands, with our finger dipped in water to give a very smooth, fine finish. Okay, one thing as a QA/QC engineer supervising such a job needs to really check on for effective adhesion is that during the application of the expansion joint sealant, you should ensure that it's not being rushed and that there are no entrapped air, because this is one of the major failures for expansion joint sealant. Okay. All right. The thickness, generally, when installing an expansion joint in a concrete mass, this is actually guided by the thickness of the concrete slab or concrete element, whatever you are casting. So for a 4-inch concrete, we should have a minimum of 8 feet by 12 feet. For a concrete thickness of 5 inches, we should have a width of 10 feet by 15 feet. Okay, now this should just applied by the length and the breadth. Okay, this expansion joint would aid in the elimination of cracks. Now, while expansion joints are put in place to accommodate movement and prevent the concrete mass from cracking, it may not entirely eliminate cracks eventually or cracks from happening on the concrete. Why? Because there are different factors that affect the formation of cracks in concrete. So expansion joint is a major engineering intelligence to control where and how the cracks may occur. Okay. Now, as a QA/QC engineer, one of the things you will need to also look out for while supervising a job of expansion joint sealant installation is to look out for the primer application, okay, whereby the backer rod is being installed, okay. The backer rod ought to be installed before priming, okay. That is one major check that needs to be done. Another check that needs to be done is to ensure that the technical data sheet of the product being used is checked to see that the maximum width that that expansion joint sealant can accommodate or handle is not exceeded. Okay. Okay. Now, another thing you need to do is to ensure that the surface preparation is done adequately. The use emphasis on the use of a vacuum is actually paramount. Okay. The next thing, applying the sealant while primer is still tacky. All right. A primer while it's still tacky, expansion joint sealant can be applied because once it's no longer tacky, that means it's cured. Okay. And that way it will have little or no effect to its purpose while it's been put into the expansion joint. Okay. I would like to reiterate, please, if you have any question, any inquiries you want to make, kindly reach out to us. You can chat us on the chat box or fill out our feedback form and we'll get back to you on whatsoever inquiries you have. If you're having any questions outside even the topics we are covering now, please feel free to air it and we'll be more than happy to get back. Don't miss our next webinar. Please, please, please don't miss our next webinar. Our next webinar will be very impactful, very incisive, it's going to be very packed. Please feel free to invite people. Knowledge is power, and that's just the truth. Knowledge is power. Here at Costa-Ken, we see it as giving back to everyone to get this knowledge. Okay. We're going to be talking about wet area waterproofing in our next webinar, where we'll be featuring our star product, Costa 2K. Okay, Costa 2K, yes. We're going to be seeing why Costa 2K stands out of every other product you see out there in the market. Believe you me, I can tell you one for free is that is hydrophobic. That's just an expo anyway. I can tell you for free that it's flexible. That's why we call it flexible cementitious. So please don't miss our next webinar, Costa 2K. We're going to be talking about it in depth. All right, where you can use it, how you use it, and the right methodology of applying it. Okay. With this, I would like to say a very big thank you to everyone that has attended today's webinar. I really appreciate your presence. You are the stars of this webinar. Please, if you have any inquiries, fill our feedback form and we'll joyfully get back to you. Okay. Thank you very much. A copy of a recording of the webinar will be uploaded to our YouTube page. Please kindly follow, subscribe to our YouTube page. All right, and stay tuned and we'll communicate you on the timing for our next webinar. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.